In the heart of rural Iowa lies a remarkable story that defied every medical prediction and captured the hearts of millions around the world. When Bobby and Kenny McCaughey welcomed 7 babies into their lives on a November morning in 1997, they didn't just become parents, they became part of medical history. What began as a simple dream to expand their family transformed into one of the most extraordinary journeys ever witnessed. And today, nearly 3 decades later, the legacy of that miraculous birth continues to inspire and amaze. The McCaughey family's story isn't merely about the statistical improbability of septuplets surviving birth. Rather, it's about the power of faith, the strength of family bonds, and the remarkable resilience of 7 individuals who have grown from tiny, fragile infants into accomplished adults living meaningful lives. As the world once marveled at their arrival, today we look back at where Bobby and Kenny's children have journeyed, and the answer reveals something far more profound than anyone could have predicted on that fateful day in 1997. The story of the McCaughey's begins in the small town of Carlisle, Iowa, where Bobby and Kenny live a quiet, unassuming life. They were a happy couple, deeply devoted to one another and to their daughter Michaela, who brought immense joy to their household. However, like many families, they harbored a deep desire to grow their family further. The couple longed for another child to complete what they envisioned as their perfect family unit. Despite their hopes and prayers, the years passed without the blessing they so desperately wanted. Bobby and Kenny faced the emotional toll of infertility, a journey that tests the patience, faith, and perseverance of even the strongest couples. The disappointments mounted, and there were nights when they questioned whether their dream of a larger family would ever become reality. Yet they refused to give up, holding on to hope that one day, their family would welcome another precious life. After years of heartache, Bobby and Kenny made the courageous decision to pursue fertility treatment. They consulted with medical professionals who offered them options and possibilities. The couple understood the risks and uncertainties involved, but they were willing to take that chance if it meant fulfilling their dream of having another child. Little did they know that their decision would lead to something far beyond their wildest imagination. When the pregnancy test came back positive, Bobby and Kenny felt overwhelming joy and relief. Their prayers seemed to have been answered. However, this moment of happiness would quickly transform into shock when the ultrasound revealed something extraordinary. Not 1, not 2, but 7 heartbeats. 7 tiny lives were developing inside Bobby's womb, all at the same time. The news left them stunned and speechless. The doctors looked at them with a mixture of amazement and concern as they explained the unprecedented nature of what was unfolding. As the reality of carrying septuplets began to sink in, Bobby and Kenny faced a decision that no parent should ever have to make. The medical team, concerned about the viability of all 7 pregnancies, recommended selective reduction. In clinical terms, this meant deliberately reducing the number of fetuses to increase the chances of survival for the remaining babies. It was presented as the rational, medically sound choice, a way to give their children the best possible odds. The recommendation was made with the best of intentions. The doctors weren't being callous or cruel. They were drawing on decades of medical knowledge and experience. Multiple pregnancies, particularly with 7 fetuses, carried enormous risks. The strain on Bobby's body would be extreme. The likelihood of complications, premature labor, developmental issues, and infant mortality was significant. From a purely medical standpoint, selective reduction made sense. But Bobby and Kenny weren't making a purely medical decision. Their choice was informed by something deeper, their faith and their profound belief in the sanctity of life. After wrestling with the decision, they made a choice that would define their entire family story. They decided to reject the medical recommendation and carry all 7 babies to term. They chose to trust in God's plan, to have faith that these 7 lives were meant to exist, and to embrace the miracle that was unfolding within Bobby's body. This decision was not made lightly or without understanding the consequences. Bobby and Kenny knew the risks. They understood that their choice could result in loss, heartbreak, and tragedy. Yet they also understood that it was their decision to make, a decision rooted in their deepest convictions and their unwavering faith. In choosing hope over fear, they set the tone for everything that would follow. As Bobby's pregnancy advanced, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. The McCaughey family had become the focus of international media attention. In the small town of Carlisle, Iowa, suddenly found itself at the center of a global story. News crews descended upon the quiet community. Reporters camped outside hospitals, waiting for any updates. The improbable had become real, and the world was watching to see what would happen next. Medical professionals from around the region gathered to prepare for what would be one of the most complex deliveries in medical history. Over 40 medical experts assembled: neonatologists, obstetricians, nurses, respiratory specialists, and countless support staff. Every detail was meticulously planned. Contingencies were prepared. Multiple delivery teams were briefed on every possible scenario. The hospital transformed into a controlled environment where every second counted, and where split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death. Bobby and Kenny, surrounded by love and support from their family, church community, and the entire nation, prepared themselves for the moment that would change their lives forever. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The uncertainty was terrifying. Yet they remained steadfast in their belief that they would see their 7 children alive and healthy. Then came the day. In a remarkable turn of events that seemed almost too perfect to be true, the delivery happened in just 7 minutes. As medical teams sprang into action, 7 babies entered the world in rapid succession, a pace that doctors later acknowledged was extraordinary and fortunate. Each cry was a symphony of life, each tiny infant a miracle. The babies, named Kenny Jr., Alexis, Natalie, Kelsey, Nathan, Brandon, and Joel, had all survived the birth process. The medical team immediately assessed each baby. Despite their low birth weights, each weighing slightly more than 2 pounds, all 7 septuplets were alive and breathing. It was a moment of pure joy mixed with continued concern, as these fragile infants would require intensive care and support to survive. But in that moment, the impossible had happened. All 7 had made it. The celebration of birth was tempered by the reality of what came next. Each of the 7 septuplets was immediately transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit, where they would spend weeks fighting for survival. The NICU became their temporary home, a space filled with life support machines, ventilators, monitors, and countless medical interventions necessary to keep their underdeveloped bodies functioning. Bobby and Kenny's role transformed. They went from anticipating the joyful moment of holding their babies in their arms to watching them struggle for every breath. The emotional roller coaster was intense. Hope alternated with fear. Each small improvement, a baby successfully breathing on their own for longer periods, weight gain, improvement in vital signs, brought celebration. Yet the threat of complications remained ever present. Infection was a constant concern. Developmental complications could emerge at any time. The future remained uncertain. The global community rallied behind the McCaughey family. Donations poured in from strangers touched by their story. Messages of encouragement arrived from around the world. Churches held special prayers. Schools held fundraisers. The outpouring of support became a source of strength for Bobby and Kenny during the darkest and most uncertain days. They were no longer just a family in a small Iowa town. They had become a symbol of hope for millions. The medical team worked tirelessly, but ultimately, it was the will of the 7 infants to survive that made the difference. Day after day, week after week, the septuplets fought. They grew stronger. Their lungs developed. Their bodies adapted to life outside the womb. Slowly, one by one, they were able to leave the hospital and go home with their parents. Once home, Bobby and Kenny faced a new kind of challenge. Raising one newborn is exhausting. Raising 7 simultaneously required a level of organization and endurance that most people can barely imagine. The couple found themselves in a constant state of motion, changing diapers, preparing bottles, soothing crying infants, and somehow maintaining their sanity through sleepless nights and endless demands. They couldn't have done it without help. The community rallied around them in practical ways. Volunteers from their church brought meals. Neighbors helped with household chores. Teenagers volunteered their time to assist with feeding and care. This community support became the lifeline that allowed the family to not just survive but to create a nurturing environment where all 7 children could thrive. As the children grew from infants to toddlers to school-aged children, their individual personalities began to emerge. 7 babies who looked remarkably alike developed 7 distinctly different ways of seeing and interacting with the world. Some were outgoing and gregarious, others were more reserved. Some excelled at athletics, others discovered talents in music or academics. While they shared a unique bond from their miraculous birth, each of the septuplets was becoming their own person. The teenage years brought new dynamics. The house that had once been filled with the chaos of multiple infants now buzzed with the energy of 7 distinct teenagers, each navigating their own developmental journey. School became central to their lives. The septuplets excelled academically, impressing their teachers with their dedication and natural abilities. They participated in sports, joined clubs, performed in school plays, and engaged in volunteer work. They were no longer defined solely by their unusual birth. They were becoming accomplished young people in their own right. By 2016, when the septuplets graduated from Carlisle High School, a significant milestone had been reached. Bobby and Kenny watched with pride as their 7 children, the same children who had defied every medical expectation at birth, walked across the stage to receive their diplomas. The journey that had begun with uncertainty and fear had led to this moment of accomplishment. However, as graduation approached, the septuplets began charting different courses for their futures. 4 of them, Natalie, Kelsey, Nathan, and Joel, received scholarships to Hannibal Lagrange University. This achievement reflected not only their academic abilities, but also their resilience and determination. The scholarship was a validation of their hard work and an opportunity to pursue higher education away from home. Kenny Jr. and Alexis, meanwhile, chose a different path. Rather than moving away to a distant university, they opted to stay close to home by attending Des Moines Area Community College. Their decision reflected a practical approach to education while maintaining their close ties to family. They understood the value of being near their support system while still pursuing their educational goals. Brandon's choice was perhaps the most dramatic. Driven